who's the god you swear an oath to? And I mean this as a legitimate question because as a Norse pagan, I technically have a lot of options. But in a lot of religions, it kind of seems to be narrowed down to either one or two deities. And it's a fairly, like, oath taking itself is a fairly, like, nebulous concept, but it's very honor bound. A lot of cultures took a lot of importance in oath taking. In fact, in a lot of cultures, including the Norse, it was like written into their laws what to do if, how to take an oath, what to do if the oath was taken, like how to do it and everything, what to do if such things were broken, and, the actions that each party can take after a broken oath on either side. For example, in Greek mythology, there was Horkos, who was specifically, he was the god of oaths. He watched over all oaths and would very much curse people who took a false oath. So people who were not intending to take the oath in any seriousness or immediately trying to scam the other party. And in one of Aesop's fables, which I've talked about before, he will personally send you to the afterlife. In Roman mythology, in a very similar vein, we have Sanctus, but Orcus, from Etruscan and Roman religion specifically, was a god of the afterlife, specifically had an aspect to punishing those who took false oaths. And Irish religion is kind of fluid, but a lot of the times it is more associated with Lugh, who is specifically the god of law, and is a very important god in Irish mythology, period. In fact, the holiday, Lunasa, is a day to specifically take a lot of oaths, and while for the most part, usually for more private concerns, such as, marriage and stuff like that, a lot of different kind of oaths tend to be taken on Lunasa. But the rest of this video is going to be about Norse paganism, and a lot of people might be surprised Odin is not one of the gods of oath-keeping. While I don't promote taking the myths literally, they don't necessarily paint Odin as taking the advice he gives to keep oaths that are in the Havamal, his own words. But I can certainly see an argument for calling upon his name in an oath, especially to someone who would be of higher ranking than you, either in a kindred or in, legal government events that would allow you to do so. Now, I won't go into detail, but specifically my kindred, we take a lot of oaths on Uller, who is heavily associated with oaths specifically on an oath ring. And yeah, a lot of our oaths as a ritual aspect involve oath rings. And this is perpetuated by the fact that in 2007, a shrine to Uller in Sweden was found, and there were 45 oath rings on that shrine. And there's also mythological evidence that would support this, especially in, certain references to Uller and oath-taking. But he was also the Ausagrimmer while Odin was exiled. He was chief of the gods during that time. So he very much served a purpose that would have, he be the immediate choice. Another interesting choice is Tyr, who I've seen a bunch of theories going around that Uller and Tyr may have been the same god that was split or something, but I haven't seen a lot of academic sources for that. But it's an interesting thought. Now, Tyr is a very popular god. He is the god of justice, but definitely more justice into the spirit of justice, and he's very aggressive. I would imagine it's definitely more of a Horkos situation to call upon Tyr for an oath. As opposed to the judge of the Aesir for Seti, who is a little more about reconciliation. He's definitely more letter of the law kind of guy, and also, unlike Tyr, very much I believe one of his titles is literally the reconciler of men. So it would be, if you call upon him for an oath, there will be just reconciliation to both sides, but he's also not going to let, breaking that oath slide. Now, we don't have a direct reference to anyone who would be associated with such things among the Vanir, but I would say, given the culture of the time of the mythologies were being written, it would most likely be Njord, who was king of the Vanir, and therefore would be likely heavily involved in such matters. Again, this is a little more of my musing based on what I know more than anything, but I think is a very interesting choice, especially in matters of money. But I think that the god that would have been more associated with oaths, especially in general, would have been Var, um, who was the goddess associated with oathing and agreement. So we're definitely getting a little more of a broad concept here than necessarily anything maybe too associated with the previous options. There is some evidence to say, because Var is also used as a name of Freya, that they may be associated with each other or that they may have been the same goddess, but we do have to remember that the meaning of Var is literally just pledged or beloved, so it's very likely that this is both a name and a kenning. Now, as I said, Var is lesser known, comes up way less often than any of the other options, so I don't necessarily fault anyone, but it definitely does seem that Var would have been more a goddess associated with oaths and agreements in a very general sense. So more than likely, specifically things like marriage oaths, mercantile agreements, than necessarily, like government things that probably Uller ran over, but I think she would have also been involved in that in a lot of cases. Was there anyone that I missed or left out? Of what other, god of oaths are there in other mythologies? I'd like to know. Most importantly, thank you for watching.